today on Beyond 6 Seconds.
With these kids, I want them to know that, you started with a complete setback of, no parents, no family, no good health. And here you are, and you can go out there and conquer anything you want. They should be able to feel that.
Welcome to Beyond 6 Seconds, the podcast that goes beyond the 6-second first impression to share the extraordinary stories and achievements of everyday people. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel. Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today we are talking with Shobha Vanchiswar. Shobha is a writer and artist in New York who's leveraging her talents to help children halfway around the world. Together with her daughter, niece, and her friends, she's supporting the education of HIV-positive girls at an orphanage in India called Mukta Jivan. Thank you very much, Shobha, for joining me on the podcast today.
It's my pleasure.
Maybe you could just start by telling us a little bit about Mukta Jivan. What does the name mean? What's their mission? Things like that.
Right. Okay. Mukta Jivan, essentially translated from the Hindi, Mukta is free and Jivan is life. So it's free life.
Mm-hmm.
This is a place that is run by an order of nuns. They have an orphanage for children afflicted with HIV. The kids come in and they could be Hindu kids or Christian kids, but the nuns don't convert them. They are very secular when it comes to taking the kids in.
I see.
And it's a beautiful place. It is in the middle of nowhere, kind of an oasis where there is lush green growth of banana trees and all kinds of fruit trees and crops. And they try to be self-sustaining. It's organic. They've gone off the grid by getting solar power.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't count on government support because they know that's not always consistent.
Sure.
When they first got this land, I understand that there was no water supply. So they had tankers bringing in water, and then they built a rain catchment area, and now they have surplus water that they use for everything. It's a very nice, peaceful place when you go there. So me working with them always feels like they're doing the hard work, which makes one want to help them, because if they're doing such a good job and all their needs are basically funding, it's a good idea to assist them.
Wonderful. And where are they based? I know you mentioned it's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
It's way outside the city of Mumbai.
Okay.
And if you had to try and get there, you either need a car with a driver,
Mm-hmm.
or you would have to take trains and buses and things to get there. It's about 2 hours outside the city. And 2 hours doesn't sound like a big deal in the United States because we're going on nice roads and
Right.
things. Over there, it's not so simple. So in a way, they're kind of isolated from everything.
I see.
And these children, for their periodic medications, they have to be brought in a van from the orphanage to the city to get their shots and tablets or whatever, and then they have to go back.
Oh, I see. Why did Mukta Jivan's work resonate with you so much?
Well, I think when I first got the opportunity to visit with kids with HIV,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually expecting a very depressing situation.
Mm-hmm.
I was imagining sick kids and knowing they're orphaned because their parents have already succumbed to the disease and things. But instead, I visited 2 orphanages and 1 hospital. And in each case, people were really doing a wonderful job trying to do the best for these children. And under the circumstances, these kids were actually thriving. So my take was, how could you not help them? Because they, with the right medication and care, have every reason to have long lives. And I felt, well, okay, they have the medication, but they need an education. And that's being done for them, but it's a very basic education. It's been a slow process to take them to the level of, say, graduate with a GED kind of a high school background, and then comes to train them in some skill because they have to become independent.
Right. So how did you figure out how you could best help them?
So I thought, I could help with the education part of it because, whether it's taking school supplies or just paying for certain needs, it would be something that would add to their education because a lot of basic things are harder for them to come by. And that's how I started in a very simple way. But what I've done along with school supplies, I've always also given just a check of a big sum of money that goes a long way for whatever their needs might be.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, we think in terms of exact and specific commodities, but sometimes that might not be it. They might need something else that will help them live better.
Right. Just something for their greatest needs at that time.
Yeah. And then whenever we visit, these kids always put up some kind of a show. They'll sing songs to you, they will dance, and it's like going to your child's school performance. But they don't have family that visits, so they do this for visitors. And in that, you sometimes notice some kids having more than average talent for dancing or singing. And Mira, my daughter, was the one who picked up on this more easily because she is a aspiring classical musician and knows what the music has meant in her life. And she realized these kids do not have any music education.
Right.
So she had pointed that out to me, and I thought, well, maybe we can try and help set up some kind of program. And it hasn't been easy because to get a music teacher to come even once a week or twice a week, that teacher has to come from the city of Mumbai. So we're talking long distance, they have to travel. So we have to cover the cost of travel. We have to pay them a decent enough salary that makes it worth their while to come this distance. So that meant I need to raise the funds out here that can then pay for all of that. And, monthly it comes to maybe less than $100. $1,000 keeps it going for a year.
Wow.
Which is nothing compared to what we pay for. I know as a parent who's paid for the music lessons that my daughters needed, it's a pittance. But I have to raise that money consistently to make sure that they get it. And the more money I can raise, maybe they can get more lessons. Maybe that some kind of keyboard can be bought. All of that has to be provided. And it's been a real eye-opening thing because we think it's so easy, get a teacher to teach them, but it's not so simple. Just getting a teacher who'll stick with it, getting the kids to understand that this is part of something that's just for them.
Right.
And now when I go, they kind of show me what they've learned on the keyboard, and it's really nice. And you can watch the older kids teaching the younger ones because they're like a little family of siblings. And it's very gratifying to see that because it's got nothing to do with trying to say, oh, they'll all learn music and become musicians. But I think they should all have the opportunity all our kids get to have out here. Kids love music. They like to dance. They like to sing. And this is sort of giving them more direction with that, a greater understanding of it. And, India is like Bollywood country. So they see the movies, they see all these things. Now they act like they are also part of it.
Wow. So the music and dancing really sounds like a great education as well as just a lot of fun. What other types of fun things are they interested in?
I've been so focused on their education that I, as a mother of a daughter, had failed to see that these are all girls. They're going through the same phases that my daughter goes through. They suddenly get interested in makeup, in clothes. And I had, just gone with blinders on, focusing on the education until a niece of mine who visited picked up on the fact that they were interested in makeup. So then I took makeup for them. And a friend of mine, when she heard about it, mentioned it to her daughter, who's a photographer for Glamour magazine. So Glamour magazine donated cosmetics that they get, they get all these things sent by companies.
Sure.
And so they gave me cosmetics to take. And I made sure it was just more like eye makeup and lipstick and nail polish, but not, full-fledged makeup that I wouldn't want my daughter wearing.
Right.
And it was so funny because I took it but the kids had no real way of knowing how to use it because they're only taken care of by nuns who don't use any makeup.
Right.
So I gave them the makeup and they were all very excited and I left. When I came back, I realized, our kids here now, even if no one shows them, they know to go on YouTube and look up all those lessons, right?
Right.
So these kids didn't know that. So luckily, when I went back with Mira.
Your daughter.
Yes. And she started putting makeup for them. So they had this whole girls' afternoon of putting makeup. Like Mira put for some, then some of the older girls put for the younger girls. And they were having a blast. Mira had the best fun because she was getting to practice all the things she had learned on YouTube. And the kids were having a great time. And I'm thinking, how did I miss this? This obvious need of young girls. And the nuns left us to it. They didn't even stay there because this wasn't something they could advise on. And so they just left and we had the best fun. And it's these moments that I feel are most gratifying, It's not always saying, what did you learn today? Or how far did you go with your studies? It's how much are you enjoying the life you have?
And there's just so much opportunity, as you said. You've been visiting Mukta Jivan for many years now, and that
Yeah,
it really
10 years. I go at least once a year, if not 2 times.
Wow. And it's really evolved from bringing some school supplies to extra funds and then building a music program and
Right.
bringing in makeup and cosmetics and just finding more and more opportunities to help.
Yeah, because
you
it's
know.
endless, really, if we want to give them the kind of full life that we think all kids deserve. I started with, I'd send off emails to all my friends and say, this is my goal for however X dollars.
Mhm.
And people would give me donations. And over time, I realized, I can always get money, which will always go to a good cause. But I started thinking I needed something that would be consistent, where I could depend on a basic amount at all times and everything else would be gravy,
Mhm.
so that I could give extra then for the kids.
So what did you do to set up that consistent source of funds?
Well, first of all, I started by making a book,
Mhm.
but that I made sure all the money went to the Clinton Foundation at that time. We're going back 10 years,
Mhm.
because the Clinton Foundation was giving the drugs for free for the kids. And I wanted to help them with the money to support them in their efforts.
And it was through the Clinton Foundation that you first became connected with Mukta Jivan, is
Yes,
that right?
President Clinton actually arranged when I met him, because he lives in my town, and I had a chance to chat with him and told him I was going to India. I was interested in seeing what his foundation did, and he sort of arranged the trip. And, putting politics aside, because that has no business when we're trying to do something good for any part of the world,
Mhm.
I realized that the foundation is very key in bringing the drugs, which are very expensive if one had to pay out of pocket, to all these areas that are underfunded
Mhm.
anywhere in the world. And so I really wanted to do something to support that. And so I put together this book of photographs and poems I'd written about the children. And through that, I raised $10,000, which I gave to the foundation.
Wow.
100% of the proceeds went to this. And I have a second book. Well, I have the manuscript for a second book,
Mhm.
which has more photographs and poems that I have written. But in addition, it alternates with drawings that the children have made expressing their ambitions and dreams, which are like all kids. They want to be a singer or a nurse or an astronaut,
Mhm.
and they're really nice drawings. And I'd also given them disposable cameras to take pictures of their lives.
Nice.
And they're very nice pictures. So it's a book that I think is about what I see, but also their voice. But trying to find a publisher to do it fully, where every penny goes to this orphanage,
Mhm.
has been hard. So I'm still looking for help.
Right, because you self-published your first book, and now you're looking for a publisher to help you with your next book.
Anybody who hears this podcast and wants to help me, I will welcome that so much. And then along the line, because I'm an artist and I paint, I do botanicals that get converted to note cards.
Mhm.
And that's been doing well over the years. And 15% of the net income goes towards Mukta Jivan. And then very recently, I have launched a line of soft furnishings that I like to call the printed garden,
Oh.
because it's again my botanicals
Mhm.
that get digitally printed on napkins and table mats, table runners, tea towels, and pillows. And again, 15% goes to the Mukta Jivan kids. Because I figure this way, someone can get something that I think is a very well-made product.
Mhm.
They get something beautiful and they also do something good.
Mhm.
And it's a way for me to put my artistic skills, my gardening skills, because everything I paint, I grow. And all that comes together towards helping something. So it's been a kind of a nice learning curve, because I can do the creative things. I have the passion to do that and to help. But the business aspect of it has been very eye-opening, because there's so many aspects and I have no idea. But I'm learning. And now I have some MBA students who are going to be helping me in the new year to put together a whole business strategy, my accounting and everything, so that it's about the artistic skills and the social cause coming together. And I'm very excited about that, because I can use all the help possible.
That's wonderful. And I say your first book is called The Lucky Ones.
It's called The Lucky Ones, yeah.
Wonderful.
The second one is called Aspirations, but I still need to have a published.
Right.
And, it gives me a purpose too in whatever I do creatively, to tell the story of something and to see it being used in some good way.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed logical to me to say, okay, I have these things. Why don't I try and do something with it? Because I want something sustaining. If this project does extremely well, I can make the percentage even higher because there'll always be this consistent need to help these children.
Mm-hmm.
And unless it comes to a point where there are no more kids with HIV, in which case there'll always be another cause to help out. But in the near future, I don't see that happening. They're going to be children in need. And I wanted something that would be, sustainable. And then when I ask for additional funding from friends and anyone who's willing to give, then we can do even more, whether it's getting them better clothing, teaching them how to interview for jobs. There's so many things that they could get help with.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to see that opportunity being provided to these children that we take so much for granted with our own.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's such a great way to do it, to combine creative and artistic passions. And as you said, having that extra purpose really just makes it so much of a richer experience.
Yeah. You're so correct, And for me, I write poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm bringing everything together. It makes me feel like there's a reason why I write, why I paint, and why I garden, because it all comes to this. My business is called Seeds of Design, and I feel like these children are like seeds too,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm trying to nurture and have them bloom. I feel like I'm the beneficiary. When I watch the children thrive, I see the nuns doing such a good amount of selfless work. The least I can do is to do my part.
Seeds of Design, I know that's also the name of your blog, and that you do a regular blog about gardening topics. Is that also part of your business for selling your prints and your cards?
Yes, because seedsofdesign.com is the website.
Mm-hmm.
And my blog is a weekly blog, and in general, it's about gardening, but often it's gardening as a metaphor for life.
Ah.
So I do have a readership that doesn't garden at all, but they like the articles.
Mm-hmm.
And with that website, I have, whether it's my artwork that's available or prints of my botanical or the note cards, the fabric products, all of that is on the website. And I've just started, selling it online.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm learning the challenges of online business, which is something I need to know anyway. So this is a good way to do it because now I'm not likely to say, oh, well, I'll put it off for now. No, the need is now. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to get my act together. And so that's what I'm hoping, that I can grow this business into something bigger and have something I can always say is available for the needs of these children, or if I'm really successful, increase the number of places I can help.
That's wonderful. So what's next for your work with Mukta Jivan?
Oh, I think it's continuing trying to get all the kids on the track to get their basic schooling in. There are kids, a lot of them, because of the HIV, they are behind in their growth,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's their mental capacity of learning on par with their age or just their physical growth. And I think the more we provide for them, the better it'll be to help them deal with these handicaps.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to be able to say, okay, they were all supported. For the most part, they're being in occupational kind of schools after their basic schooling, where they're learning whether it's tailoring or typing and things like that.
Oh.
But I would love if there's a child there who is doing really well and who really wants to go to college, then we should have the funding for these things. Now, college is not expensive the way it is out here. But if you're someone who has no money, then any kind of tuition is expensive. And I would love to be able to say, okay, however many of you want to go to college, you're going to go.
Wow.
And sometimes it sounds like a long shot to me, but I think if I don't have that in my mind, then what's the point?
Right. When you started out, it was kind of about what are their basic immediate needs for their schooling. And now it's really evolving to, well, how do they develop even further and then looking towards their future?
Yeah, because at that time they had no kid who was beyond a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
But now these kids have been growing because they're able to grow and thrive with all the care they're getting. So we can't have these adults with no skills or education.
Mm-hmm.
And for all of us who have been privileged to have a good education, we understand how that empowers us. And with these kids, I want them to know that, you started with a complete setback of, no parents, no family, no good health.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are, and you can go out there and conquer anything you want. They should be able to feel that. And that's what I would really like to make them feel secure about, that you can dream about things. Like this last time when I went earlier this year,
Mm-hmm.
they were very excited because there was one girl that had grown up in their midst. And I guess she'd left the orphanage because she did have some relative who took her in or something. But she got married
Mm-hmm.
and she just had a baby who was not HIV.
Wow.
To these kids, that meant everything because it could be them.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand that because really none of these kids should have been born with HIV. If their parents had been identified with it and the mothers had been given the care that they should have got when they were pregnant with these babies, we could have had the babies be born without the virus.
Right.
And that wasn't possible. So these kids are just sort of stuck with what was dealt,
Mm-hmm.
And for them to have that hope that their life could one day be more normal meant everything. I want that to be like, yes, why not you?
Exactly. I mean, all of us, we kind of take for granted here is that we have role models. We've seen people do all kinds of things before us who may or may not look like us or in our community. But, in other parts of the world, it's really groundbreaking to see someone who's in your situation really go up and achieve all these things that you never thought were possible.
And these kids don't have that at this point. And we don't talk about HIV anymore, even in this country. But it exists.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of have pushed it back because there's so much else that's taking up our minds and our time. But in other parts of the world, they're dealing with very basic matters. And in countries like India, which have other burgeoning problems, again, this is marginalized. Like, look at these kids. They live like 2 hours from any real civilization.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have an understanding of the real world outside. They watch the Hindi movies and they think that's the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, it's a slow thing. Even I forget sometimes how sheltered they really are. And I have to rely on the nuns guiding me in how much to provide for them and when to do it.
Right. Well, that's great. They're really taking care of their full education, both their schooling and really life education. And you're really helping with that as well.
I hope, because they do need help from people like me, in terms of whether it's just visiting. I mean, these kids don't get visitors, so they're always happy that anybody's spending time with them. So I prefer to take school supplies. Now it's makeup, hair accessories. Sometimes I've taken games.
Sure.
So I do take a lot of things that I think will be necessary, but I know essentially there's just always a need for money.
Mm-hmm. So then how can people who are listening get in touch with you to either learn more or help support your efforts with Mukta Jivan?
Well, they could go onto my website first to read up on these children. Like I said, it's seedsofdesign.com, and the page that says the lucky ones, the menu that drops down from it, you can read all the different articles and my own reports. Every time I visit, I come back and write an article about it. They can look at the shop page because that's all the products and 15% of everything I sell, whether it's a painting, whether it's a note card or any of the fabric products, 15% goes to these children. So they can make online purchasing. And if they want to know more or sort of donate more, they can get in touch with me through the website or just, my email is right there. The only drawback is when people think about donating money to me, I'm not a 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be an individual in that nonprofit capacity, it goes through a lot of bureaucratic issues that I may not be capable of dealing with in the, just me working alone.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially when people have donated money to me, it's because they trust me to give this money to the nuns because I can't give them a tax break on it, unfortunately. Those who know me know I have no other reason to go through this except to help these children. So they're happy providing me the funding to give to these children. And that is one way. But then, if you're a complete stranger, you have no reason to say, here, let's give you this check. So that's why I'd rather they bought the products.
Mm-hmm.
So you have something for it and I can give something from there. They can contact me. They can ask me questions. I'm always happy to answer. I'm happy to talk in places and do whatever I can to make people understand about this problem because it's rampant in so many parts of the world. And I'm always happy for any kind of contribution. Every dollar goes a long way.
Wonderful. And I'll also put the web address for Seeds of Design in the show notes of the podcast so that people can see it.
Oh,
there
I'd love
well.
that. Yeah, I would love that because I so appreciate appreciate you taking an interest in this, Carolyn, because, word of mouth is the best way all these things get broadcast.
Well, thank you, Shobha. It's just really inspiring to hear stories of people who are doing things that they're passionate about, that they care about, and really making big impacts on people's lives around the world. So thank you. Thanks for listening to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player so you won't miss any episodes. You can also find all the show notes and links we discussed in this episode at our website, www.beyond6seconds.com. Until next time.